All right, seems like it's a live room. Usual testing and whatnot. Just to make sure we have something called. All right, seems like it's a live room. Usual testing and whatnot. Just to make sure we have something called. All right, seems like it's a live room. Quiet. Usual testing and whatnot. I'll have to do. I don't know what that noise is, but anyway, we can live with it. You will have to live with it, I suppose. It's a more accurate statement. So, yeah, comments, I guess. Yeah, the mouse actually lines up. It never does that usually. I guess I'll leave them in here until I have to move them, and then I'll know whether things are broken or not. Maybe I'll know. I don't know. Doesn't really matter, I suppose. So anyway, Amy asked, my mother is watching this with me, and she started laughing. Miles Mathis is still a bully and an egomaniac, and now he's a truther. As it happens, they went to the same high school. She says he was a little weasel then. Some things don't change. Yes, I suppose. So then this Frank says, then why is your mug being promoted on YouTube as Miles Mathis? So, these are just such ignorant comments. People are just so stupid. I mean, they don't know how YouTube works. I don't get to decide what YouTube puts as related content. I just don't. It'd be very nice if they let me do that. But they don't, and it's just relevant. And none of my videos could you be fooled. I'm always stating that I'm not Miles Mathis, and I'm always pointing out how Miles Mathis is wrong. So I guess it's just such an ignorant comment. Like, you didn't watch any of the videos. Okay. Yeah, just so stupid. Just randomly clicking around at the moment, found 27 minutes of some comments on permutivity and permeability. No. Sorry, but this is just garbage. But anyway, let's go into it. FYI, regarding understand Maxwell's equations and how they develop, the permutivity and permeability of space were determined empirically and independently of the speed of light. That's just absolutely nonsense. They're absolutely made up numbers. I think I might have the Wikipedia page. Yeah, still open. Let's see. I mean, it says it right on the page. Let's see. Organizations prefer the electric constant rather than any name that carries the hidden or misleading implication that describes some. Let's see. Okay. Fields. No, it was on here. I mean, they overtly say they're just made up, and they don't like that. That the whole reason why they want to use magnetic constant is because the numbers are just made up, and it has a misleading implication that mu describes a physical property. There we go. Okay, the carries the hidden and misleading implication that mu zero carries some physical property. It has no physical property. It's not a real number. It's not consistent with any experiment. It's not a measured effect. It's just a made-up number. So again, you're just wrong. It's just a made-up constant, and the constants obviously, it's not a coincidence. They add up to the speed of light. So I'm sorry, you're just an idiot. Anyway, all right. Believe whatever you want. I really just don't care. You think Maxwell had some spiritual knowledge of what the speed of light would be. Okay, fine. All right, so it's not empirically and independently of the speed of light, and only afterwards was it seen that the speed of propagation of waves implied by the equations would roughly equal the empirically measured speed of light. So again, you're as it overtly says in the Wikipedia page, these numbers were not empirically ever measured in physical reality. They're not real physical numbers. They're made-up numbers, completely made up. So then, assuming that light indeed is waves, which is idiotic. The truth of Maxwell's equations determines a simple mathematical relationship between these three measured constants. Well, they're not three measured constants, so that's overtly denied in the Wikipedia page. It says in 3 locations. They are not measured numbers. They're not consistent with anything in the physical universe. It says in 3 locations in the Wikipedia page. Nowadays, this enables one of these constants to be defined in terms of the other 2. And that is what is done with permutivity. So the definition is not into Maxwell's equations. Yes, it is. But rather taken out of them. Yeah, well, I say horse shit. Go ahead and prove the origin of the number was a measurement, because it wasn't. There's no evidence that it was a measurement. There's no experiment defining how it was measured. So you're really out of luck, and this is all just horse shit. So I'm deleting it. Okay, coffee and smokes. Draft Science. You're not the only one who Miles Mathis has slandered. Oh, yeah, this guy's posted before, so yeah, Miles gets into this whole Jewish conspiracy crap, which I have no interest in. But yes, Miles Mathis is a truther, lunatic kook. Curious about your thoughts regarding this topic. Plus, I was wondering if you caught this. Thank you for your time in recent series. I don't know what this is, but fucking garbage, no doubt.
Electromagnetic field outside of the insulation. However, if you do some sort of quantum interference experiment, you can tell that there's current going through because it...
Okay, so I did waste a little bit of my time apparently watching that. And it's convoluted gauge theory nonsense crap. So I don't know why anybody would be terribly interested. It doesn't say anything. Now, that guy, I actually thought he had some hope. It was a few years ago, I saw him do a video where he basically was pointing out how we don't have evidence of any of this crap. And so I thought that was rather hopeful, but I didn't know he was a gauge theory loony kook. There is a difference between a coil with a core and a set of coils in a primary and secondary configuration. Yeah, I know that. Where it does not matter if the primary is in the inside or the outside. Well, I think it always matters. The primary being on the outside and the primary being on the inside would be very different. So I don't think that's true. I won't delete it, but it's a stupid comment. Anyway, RC is resistor capacitor circuit. Yeah, I know that. I figured it out by watching the video, Mr. Who Can't Do Math. So apparently he thinks somewhere I said I didn't know what an RC circuit was. No, I never said that. You're an idiot. Here's an important question. We know that every atom has a certain emission spectrum. They will only release photons at certain frequencies, never at others. And that's not true either. They emit photons more at certain frequencies, not only at certain frequencies. They have certain frequencies where they have a very high emission line, a brighter line. This makes perfect sense in your theory due to the structure of the atom. Yes, of course it does. Trapped force bits keep reflecting at certain frequencies that you should be able to get from how close or far apart you put the ping pong paddles. Yes, how much pressure there is will decide what frequency of light you're going to get. So how compressed the electrons are will dictate how far they can be pushed, and then will dictate how far they push back in terms of a pendulum swing. There's always a pendulum swing. There's always a trampoline. So the trampoline can be very loose, and stuff can burn, and then the trampoline can be very tight and go in and shoot out. All right. Due to the structure of that, and trapped force bits keep reflect certain frequencies that you should be able to get from how close or far apart your ping pong paddles are. Yeah, it's one way of analogizing, but yes, it's how compressed the electrons are, decide how much tension they're under. How much tension they're under dictates what they absorb and what they emit. If you remove the paddles, you get emission exactly that frequency. If you wobble the paddle to the right way, you can get half that frequency, a third of that frequency, etc. harmonic series. Yeah, obviously you don't create these emission lines until you're highly agitating the substance. So these lines are created, emission lines, when you heat something very hot. You burn it, essentially. So yes, you're basically breaking the atoms and you're releasing the photons trapped inside of them. In my opinion, your theory probably does a better job at explaining the mechanism behind this than conventional physics. Well, conventional physics, in my opinion, doesn't explain it at all, so I can't do much worse than that. Wow, this is long. We also know that atoms have certain absorption spectra, though. Actually, the spectra are tied to molecules, not just atoms. I am having trouble imagining how this makes sense in your theory. Well, obviously the molecules, it really isn't a spectrum of the molecules, it's in a spectrum of the individual atoms. So the molecules themselves can't really have any character. The atoms define the character. So whatever your atoms are will decide the combination of spectra. If your theory is correct, shouldn't atoms be able to absorb force bits regardless of their frequency? Well, that's the catch, is that they absorb everything. And the real point is what do they throw back? So the point is that the gravity bits are absorbed and can be reflected or kept as momentum of the electron. So that's the catch, is when does the electron give back the photon? It can give it back here, or it can give it back here. Or I can give it back here. I can give it back here. See, I mean, it's the motion of the electron is in jitter, and with every stop, every time the electron stops, so the electron's moving. Every time it stops, it emits a photon, a piece of a photon. So you can understand that if it's jittering in a direction, then it's emitting a photon with each motion in one direction. Stop, photon in that direction. This way, stop, photon in that direction. Get it? Shouldn't atoms be able to absorb force bits regardless of the frequency? Yes, they do. They don't even need to come at a frequency in your theory. Correct. Atoms could absorb or tap single force bits. They do that all the time from the cosmic background radiation. Well, the point is they're absorbing gravity. So that's what's making the atoms move in gravity, as the electrons are absorbing the momentum and moving, and that's causing pressure on the other electrons, and they all are moving because of this pressure being created in one direction. There's more energy coming in one direction than the other, so they're absorbing more energy in that direction than they're absorbing in this direction, so they end up going more in that direction because they absorb more energy in that direction. That don't come at a frequency just as well. So look, there's no real pure reflections. That's the bottom line here. Okay, so we can call it a reflection when, yeah, it gives it back pretty quick, but it's really not a reflection. So I'm just saying, obviously there's no pure reflections. Nothing ever just bounces off. Everything always gets absorbed, moves, stops, then stops because of an actual another force hitting it, and then gives back the force in the other direction. The cosmic background rate that don't come at a frequency just as well. Why does every atom preferably absorb photons at certain absorption spectrum then? Just has to do with the ones that are, let's say, what's the right terminology to use? It's not breaking it, obviously. Well, I'll write that down. Absorption spectra. Because it's not re-releasing the photon, or it's not re-releasing it at the same frequency. That's the catch. So absorption is it absorbs it, but it releases it as infrared. So that would be the answer. So when something absorbs all the photons at a certain frequency, it means it released the energy as invisible radiation. So it's either radio waves or microwaves are some lower spectrum radiation, because now the trampoline is weak. So those are atoms that aren't under as much tension. So the absorption created a low frequency response. So they lowered the frequency of the light that came in. So it didn't really absorb it. It readmits it as heat in some regularly invisible form, microwaves, invisible, infrared. Why does every atom? Okay, so I already answered that. If I understand your theory correctly, it would predict that atoms should absorb photons of all frequencies. Yeah, it does. And it's just about whether it readmits and what form it readmits in. So if it's under a lot of pressure, it'll readmit as an X-ray. If it's under low pressure, it readmits as infrared. Would be just the simplest way of describing it. It would predict that some atoms should absorb photons of all frequencies and do a frequency conversion inside the atom due to their structure. Well, obviously they're doing a frequency conversion, and I would say yes, all frequencies are absorbed, all energy is absorbed, and it really, where the discussion is just about whether it's transferred into some other form of energy, like infrared, some invisible form, or, converted, or absorbed as motion, which is also part of reality. Some of it's absorbed as real motion. The stuff actually, stuff gets hit by light and it actually moves a little. An attempt at an explanation would maybe be that photons coming at wrong frequencies, where there really aren't any, would jiggle the electron in such a way that the atom releases nearly as many force bits as they absorb. Well, they always have to release all the force bits unless the atom is getting pressurized, and it's going to stay pressurized, charged. If the atom or other molecule has an irregular structure, it would maybe depend on which part of the photons hit. And there's no part of the photons. If you could work out the exact details, that would certainly be impressive. Yes, well, exact details on any of this stuff, it would be impressive in the sense that, it would be amazing that I would have the time to get into, it's all very, it's a ton of chemistry. It's like explaining a DNA molecule. Yeah, I can do it superficially, but that doesn't really say it, right? I mean, making that stupid ladder double helixy thing, that's not telling you too much. Another related question, wouldn't your theory predict the emission and absorption spectra should change as you move the atoms? Yeah, if the electrons are in motion when they get hit, that's obviously going to change where they shoot back. So that's just redshift kind of logic. There is a change in shape in angles between electrons as the atom acquires velocity in your theory, isn't there? Obviously, if the light hits an electron at an angle, then it's more probable that it will release it at an angle, some other angle. If it comes in straight, it'll come back straight. But that's the whole trick of this two-slit stuff and everything else. We're really talking about, you're in the two-slit experiment, you're going against, you're hitting electrons as they, on their side, as they stick out of their round atom. So you're hitting them this way instead of hitting them this way. So in the normal circumstance, you hit them this way, they absorb the motion, they shoot back the motion. When you hit them this way, they absorb the motion and emit it this way, okay? Because the electron, in regaining its position, turns. So as the, if the pendulum wasn't on a tight wire, you could see that there would be pressure for it to go in a direction. Well, the electron's free to be moved by the pressure. So as it pushes it this way, you're pushing it towards this electron over here. This one's pushing it against it. So it bends it down. And then now it hits this one that says, I don't want you either. So first this girl rejects him, and then he goes this way, and this girl rejects him, and so he ends up coming out this way. So the pendulum swings. It's like the trampoline again, okay? You could sort of understand if you come in an angle at a trampoline, you'll compress it, but it'll bend and twist, and you might shoot out, in some other angle. You won't come straight back. You'll come out at some other angle. Angle in, angle out almost. So yes, that's what's happening. Okay, another related question. Wouldn't your theory predict the emission and absorption spectra should change as you move the atoms? Yes. Okay, sorry, I already read that. There is a change in, oh, we already read that too. As the atom acquires velocity in your theory, isn't there? I'm not sure how much it changes in shape. It clearly changes in terms of how much mass, the mass distribution in the atom, let's say, the distribution of the electrons and protons will be altered in the process of acceleration. Now, once it has velocity, I don't know if that's a permanent condition. I hope I'm not misunderstanding. It's sort of tough to work out all of the implications. Keep up the good work. Kalido, thank you. That's a good comment. I don't know why you believe in ether, though. It's just too stupid. Anyway, appreciate your sharing this info. I'm an artist, not a scientist. Can't even get my avatar pic to show up after loading it several times. Huh. Yes, well, I'm also, by preference, an artist, not a physicist. But, you know, you have to do what you have to do. All right, so this is the Linux stuff. Maybe I'll save that for a separate video. Lots of people commented on my Linux problem, so, but, you know, they're all kind of arrogant. You know. You can also, okay, another distro, I don't want that. Default measure, okay. Start zooming around 1 megabyte of space. No, it's not 1 megabyte of space. So little memory now. It's not memory, it's hard drive space, and that's the whole point, you idiot. So since John wrote that one, I'll say, so little memory. If your computer is a few years old, you better think about buying a new one while the old one is still working. Yeah, it's a fine computer, okay? It's good enough. It's old, but it's good enough for what I have to do. And the point is there's plenty of drive space, you know, 60 gigabytes or something, which is plenty to run Linux. Linux is really light. So the point is that I'm only using like 7 gigabytes of the space, okay? And the other 45 gigabytes has been absorbed by these stupid temp files. And I know it's these temp files because in the past it worked. Deleting them gave me back the space. So clearly the space is in them, but they won't delete anymore. So I know the space is in them. It doesn't show any files. They're invisible files, but I know the space is in those files because I've done this before and been there, done that. So I know. Anyway, Gary, could you possibly make a video on what you think of John Hutchinson effect? I don't know why you do this. August, September. I don't know what that means as a name. But I just don't know why would you... I mean, it's very insulting to me, in my opinion, to tell me, quote, could you make a video on Sasquatch? Could you make a video on Area 54? Could you make a video on some other completely garbage crop circles? Now, crop circles almost has way too much integrity as goof than these other things. And this John Hutchinson guy is so obviously a fraud. I mean, you can see the strings in his videos. None of these experiments are done under any controlled circumstance at all with 1943 cameras. I mean, it's so obviously fake. Why would you ask me to comment on something so obviously fake? I mean, shit. I mean, shit. I mean, it's so obviously fake. Oh, jeez. Those are directories, not files. No, they're files inside the directories. I know the directories. They have another folder in them called temp. You open that, there's no files in there, but there is, because guess what? It's eaten all the hard drive. Damn, people, possibly a virus. Yes, it obviously seems like it must be malicious because all of the standard ways of deleting something aren't working. So yes, Linux isn't as virus-proof as they say. It's obviously some program I loaded did this, so it's obviously a virus inside of a program. Anyway, take a look at Ken's latest video. Yeah, I saw it. He's really, okay, he says of the scale here. Now off the scale, he meant. He thinks a spinning brass disc, no eddy currents can appear. Well, I think eddy currents is a shitty way to look at what's happening inside of paramagnetic material. So I don't think they're currents. You're just creating pressure. You're creating charge inside of the material, and it's creating a magnet of the same polarity as the magnetic force hitting it. So it's creating a repulsive field. But But obviously, if the repulsion is in the up direction, it's not going to hurt you too much. Now, yes, obviously, when you go off the magnet, so what Ken Wheeler is doing is he has a disc magnet, and he puts a gyroscope in the center and says, look how long it keeps spinning. Well, that's because the force is essentially attempting to levitate the gyroscope. It's not trying to do anything else. So there's no against the grain kind of force. So it's a very consistent blowing air under a woman's skirt. Okay, that's no problem. All right, the problem gets when, so then he takes the gyroscope and puts it on the side of the magnet. So here's the magnet, he puts the gyroscope out here. Now the south side of the magnet is affecting the gyroscope. So now it's in a dipolar field, and now the two fields are in conflict and they're rubbing against each other. He's crossing the field lines now. Now he's going across the field lines with the spinning magnet. So he's creating a constant torque. The two fields aren't, now they're dipole fields. See, in the middle of the magnet, it's monopole against monopole. It's just black force against black force. There's no conflicts. I mean, yes, it's repulsive, but it's not in a conflict, in a torque conflict. When you put it in a dipole field, then the dipoles don't line up. Okay, the dipole coming from when one thing is spinning and the other thing is stationary, now the dipoles don't line up. So in the middle of the magnet, no dipoles, no problem. Side of the magnet, tons of dipoles going the wrong way, so the two magnets are torquing against each other. And it's that simple. And the people who follow Ken are morons. It's tragic that he gets away with this crap without any will to be interrogated and scrutinized. He's a pathetic coward, and his followers are pathetic sheeple. Speaking of cowards and sheeple, okay, your water pipe model used for teaching 8-year-olds. It's a decent enough example, and for the purpose, it's fine. I mean, you think there's two voltages in the same place. So inside a conductor, you think there's two different voltages that you can measure independently somehow. Somehow you have this magic probe that you can hit the -1 volt over here, and you can hit the, I can hit the +9 volt over here. You think that's possible? First, that there's both of those currents running in the same wire, and that second, you have some magical ability to figure out how to hit the -1 part and hit the +1 part on the conductor itself. You're an idiot. You're worse than an 8-year-old. It's insufficient in the case of changing magnetic fields. I'm sorry, it's not changing magnetic fields, it's a changing magnetic field. Okay, there's only one magnet in the field, idiot. Changing magnetic fields create a rotational E field. Says you. There's absolutely zero evidence that they do any such thing, that there's any such E field that exists or does a damn thing. That's just booger talk. There is no potential in this kind of field. Oh, so it's irrelevant. Oh, okay. It's the zero magnitude field. So you're just a Ken Wheeler believer then. You're a silly person who believes in zero magnitude fields. All right, I said it once to someone else. So he says he keeps saying the same thing again. It's just such a such a spammer. And I'll say it again. Don't bother. I'm serious when I say it. Again, you're seriously what? You're seriously providing no evidence of your accusations. None. This person is a crackpot who doesn't even understand the basics of Newton's laws. Well, the proof will be, so what's going to be your penance when you're proven wrong? When I'm proven right and you're proven an asshole, what are you going to do? Are you going to admit that you really have no opinion, no right to opine in the future because you were so colossally wrong? That your brain is such a piece of shit that it can't be relied on because you were so fucking wrong, catastrophically, insanely wrong. Anyway, he has been on record of slander, whatever, for X, right? I'm the one who's public. I'm the one inviting you into the room to make an argument. Where are you cowards doing any of that? Oh, that's right, you're not. Someone once pointed out to him that he doesn't understand the math behind the Michelson-Morley experiment. There's the point of the Michelson-Morley experiment isn't the stupid math, which is also stupid, the point is the experiment is fundamentally flawed in your stupid idiotic notion that somehow you can create two equal beams with a half silver piece of glass, because you can't. They aren't equal, retard. Person of putting out rigged math. Yeah, and it's still a public video. Why don't you just cite the video and put a link into it right there? So you're saying I did something wrong in the video. Why don't you just post the link to the video? I'll proudly let the link stay, because yeah, the fact is this is nonsense. Okay, this whole stupid, silly, everybody relying on this stupid, idiotic experiment as if it had any efficacy from the beginning is just such a joke on science. You're all humiliating yourselves. So anyway, post links or shut up. That's what I'll say to you. Show evidence or shut up. Okay, but I'm not going to let you just sit there and, well, apparently I am going to, because you won't delete. That's interesting. What the fuck? Let's see if I can do anything else to them. Add user. I'm not going to make him that. Let's see if the spam thing works. No, it doesn't work either. All right, well, fuck it. I'll do it later if I have to. All right. Obviously, the path of the probing wires is the only factor that decides what the voltmeter reads. None denies that. What do you mean no one denies that? Professor Lewin overtly denied it. I don't know. You know, how can you be this retarded? I just don't understand. You can't probe the experiment. It's impossible to be probed. You can't measure something besides field effects on the voltmeter itself. How can you measure the circuit when your voltmeter is already getting the field effects? It's already corrupted. It can't measure an isolated location when it's in the radiation. Where has Professor Lewin conceded that point? That doing your circuit math, he didn't do any Faraday logic for the voltmeter. He didn't point out, well, Faraday says the voltmeter doesn't work. Did he say that somewhere? I didn't see it in his video. Faraday says the voltmeter doesn't work because it's getting irradiated by the magnetic field. Where did he say that, shithead? None deny that. I mean, amazing. That's exactly what the results from having a non-conservative field. Again, this whole conservative, non-conservative, it's a conservative, there's no such thing as a non-conservative field, so I don't even know what that means to your silly logic. Okay, but force is always conserved. There is no such thing as the right kind of probing or passive probing, as you name it. So I don't know what you're talking about. Did Professor Lewin say that in his video somewhere? No. He asserts that there's two fucking voltages at the same location. He asserts it is reading accurately. The voltmeters are measuring the location. That's his assertion, shithead. He's saying Faraday is right about the circuit. The circuit. He didn't put math for the voltmeter. Fucking cunt. I mean, that's just obnoxiously stupid comment. He does not understand what a conservative vector field. Yeah, I understand a vector field, so I'm glad you're calling it a vector field. Right, it's not waves, is it, jackass? That's right, it's vectors. He only uses buzzwords like energy. Well, where? Why don't you prove that accusation? Another accusation with no proof. That makes shit up on the spot to fool other people into thinking he knows physics. Well, whatever. The videos speak for themselves. I'm clearly no more than you do, retard. Surprise. Okay, can't delete. Funny. All right, so here's the same guy. Vigot, whatever. I don't like arguments from authority either, but this is not cutting-edge string theory. Who said it was? The guy makes a video doing the experiment showing the flawed logic here. She explained why you want to twist wires. Then in the end, he explains, well, maybe if you come in from both sides and go up, you'll equalize the effect on the voltmeters and you'll be able to get an accurate reading. I mean, he explained what you could observe from doing the experiment and by playing with the wires. And he showed that the voltage changes as you move the wires. Now, what the fuck does this have to do with string theory or some other crap? It has to do with the fact that Professor Lewin, okay, number one, all of his experiments, which I didn't know previously, I mean, when I first watched, all of his experiments were the same ones that MIT has been doing since the 50s, okay? You can go and find the 50s and 60 videos, all right? And it's exactly the same experiments that he's doing. Now, I don't know if this one's one of them, obviously, because this one's one that he cooked up. But clearly you can see they do everything in a standard way, and they don't allow any deviation in the experiment. And I'm just saying all you really have to do is pick up the voltmeter and you could figure out, oh, this is about the voltmeter wires and what position they're in. Fuck you. Faraday's law is a law. Well, that's just stupid. It's not. That's like saying that the loop rule is a law, because it does work. The two things are fundamentally identical except for the frickin' time component. So all the loop rule is doing is saying screw the time component, because frankly every time you're going to measure this thing, it's already going to be in a state. So you're not going to measure multiple states with a voltmeter. Durr. You know, you're not going to measure state changes. Well, you can if you're using an oscilloscope, of course. All right, which Lewin did. Faraday's law, I think. No, he did. Maybe he did. I don't remember. Faraday's law is a law. Well, whatever. It's just stupid. You want to use these words. That's your prerogative. There's no. I would say laws have to be more about a fundamental function. Like you say, it's a law like gravity or some kind of real. Well, you don't think it's a real physical force. But the law part would be the fact that the magnets actually creates energy. You know, it creates a change. Energy is an imbalance in a field, and it creates an imbalance in a field. That's the law part. The exact way it affects a wire, I don't think this has anything to do. Their understanding is so far from the truth that to call it a law, Faraday's law, is misrepresenting the truth. And you'll be. Law is the law, and you'll be the next Einstein if you can find an experiment where it doesn't hold. Well, again, that's the clear argument here is this has nothing. This is the experiment where I can say it doesn't hold. Okay? Anytime you put an inductor in a circuit, all right, Faraday's law doesn't hold, because to measure the effect of that inductance on the circuit is nearly impossible. So you want to show me somebody who can do that? Okay, show me I put an inductor in the circuit and I have a resistor next to it, and you can use Faraday's law to somehow know exactly how much the resistor is going to be affected by the inductor. Good luck with that. You'll be doing integrals till infinity and beyond. All right. Let's see. What the hell happened there? See if it's still working. It appears to be. All right, let me read the chatter. Didn't look hopeful. I'm in. Big thinking is what I was looking for and landed here. Saw your name on the comment, on a comment left on Cosmic Queries, Space Time, Neil deGrasse Tyson, full episode YouTube video. I don't remember that. You get my sub. Oh, gee, so privileged. Do you think that magnetism was the source of energy in ancient times? Oh man, amazing. So you're some Atlantis believer in or something? You think in ancient times they were living high, had magnetic toilets and magnetic penicillin and stuff? I just hate people. Just can't find one that's, you know, not so broken. Every single fucking tire is flat somewhere. Anyway, spare mind. I too once thought ether could work, only to realize that what you were saying, it's circular reasoning. Pressure in the sense of rate by force photon makes a great deal of sense. Like you said, from the perspective of the constituent, everything appears to converge upon it. Yeah, I suppose if I took time, you could construct some, more detailed, perfect argument to explain how no matter what you make the ether out of, you're still going to have to account for the migration of a movement from one place to another, and it's so unnecessary to create the medium. It doesn't do anything but get in the way. I mean, you'd really like it if you were a submarine commander and you could shoot your torpedoes without the stupid water getting in the way. Okay, it just gets in the way. The problem of physicists is that they lack understanding of philosophy. Well, that's just stupid. Philosophy is irrelevant to the conversation. Philosophy is a subcategory of science. All right? Philosophy has nothing to do. Philosophy is about the intangible immersive effects. It's not about rudimentary cause. It's emergent property kind of crap. What does it mean? Philosophy is not physics. Physics is why, what. All right, physics builds mathematical models. Well, again, there would be nothing wrong with doing mathematical models if you did something more than that. And all you are doing is describing effects, and you never get to causes that work and produce testable. Well, again, that's the whole Dowdy, their whole claim that it produces something is such a lie. They've seen the effect. They don't, I predicted the effect by seeing it. Like Einstein predicted gravity or something by inventing stupid bent space. He didn't predict gravity. He has a lame effort at explaining why there's gravity, and it's just lame. It's spooky action at a distance, to use his own fucking words. Physicists don't realize they are jumping to conclusions when they are, to say they don't realize, I'm sure they realize what evidence is and the fact that they don't have any. Just like this other putz where in another comment, he brings up the Professor Lewin's assertion that in sound, the Doppler effect is uneven. That is, somehow, if you're the moving party, the Doppler effect is less or more than if you're the receiving party. So if you're the emitter, there's less effect by your movement than if you're the receiver. No evidence for that. I asked him directly, where's your physical evidence for this in sound waves? You know what he said? Sputnik. It was a retarded answer, obviously, because obviously Sputnik was radio waves, photons, not sound. I mean, it's just, they don't have any physical evidence. So you're telling me that they don't realize they don't have any physical evidence, or that they have a tiny amount of physical evidence? They don't realize that the two-slit wave similarity is not very strong, especially in single slits. It doesn't make any sense at all. That it really isn't that tight a correlation, and they're jumping to this huge conclusion and making draconian statements. It's been proven by Young, even though Newton did the experiment with a single slit 200 years earlier. Does it make any sense? No. So don't tell me they're just making a mistake or they overlooked. You can't miss the fact that the evidence is insanely weak. The weakness of the Eddington experiment, the weakness of this, bullshit fix that Einstein threw in, where he decided that just for photons, the sun is twice as massive, just for photons. So when a photon goes by, the sun gets twice as big. Horseshit. Physicists don't realize they are jumping to conclusions. Bullshit. When they are saying field lines actually exist in the real world. They're just doing what the religious people do, Mary in a piece of toast. The Shroud of Turin. Oh, it's real stuff. Jesus got wrapped in it, blah, 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 blah. 8-foot tall Jesus. And clearly something must be traveling along them. All right. He's just saying that field lines, okay, here we go. They are jumping to conclusions when they are saying field lines actually exist in the real world, and clearly something must be traveling along them. Well, obviously they just keep doing this crap where, nobody's really thought about what they're doing and said, oh, wait a minute, there can't be anything moving on these lines because there's nothing to do that. There's no evidence of anything ever moving with those lines. So the only place they move with the lines is in a solenoid. And a solenoid, it isn't the lines that are making them move. And funnily, the lines inside the solenoid are actually bouncing back and forth this way. Yeah. Anyway, the math working out only means, so the math doesn't work out. I'm not even going to make that concession. Only means that you can model what's happening assuming field lines. Their math has huge inaccuracies in it. It doesn't mean that they are ever actually there. Oh, man, you are something for long comments. You are absolutely right that the equations don't make direct statements about what are the actors and what is the exact mechanism. Well, it doesn't even come close to a vague mechanism. They have no mechanism. Even like I said, you can say virtual photon for magnetism, but clearly they have no idea how attraction is created. They can use the virtual photon for pushing, which, oh yeah, that sort of makes sense. If photons are pushing, but how do you do attraction with an emission force? How do I blow on you and it makes you come towards me? You are absolutely. I already did that. Quantum mechanics is the only subject where it shows the most that physicists lack education in philosophy. So again, this is stupid. Philosophy has nothing to do with this. They are making conclusions with unknown positions and unknown velocities. And Bohr, Heisenberg were actually right in proposing that it's possible. This means that not only can we practically not tell the absolute position, but that it may be impossible by design. Well, why would they be right about that? It's just stupid. I think it's just absolute rubbish. It's clearly obvious that we can't measure the damn things, but there's absolutely no reason to presume that the fundamental universe has ESP and special powers and I can go invisible and I can go visible. Fuck that shit. The mistake is that modern physicists are just going along with it and accepting it as law. Well, whatever, it's a religion. They're jumping to a conclusion because they want it to be true, period. It's only one possible scenario. How likely it is to actually be the case, I'd say we don't know. You can say whatever you want. I'm saying knowing that it's ludicrous to talk about things not being in a position, and it's silly to talk about something going everywhere and then going just one place. All that crap is stupid. Entanglement, stupid. Baby talk. When we stop considering alternative explanations, we definitely have a problem. Well, I'm sorry, when you consider silly Jiminy Cricket solutions to problems, then you're being an asshole, in my opinion. These answers are just, so fucking stupid. What if the universe is a matrix? Like that could make a difference somehow. I mean, they're just stupid. How are we ever going to find a better one without trying? Well, again, I don't know what kind of trying you're doing. You're all trying to come up with a wackier theory of reality, not a simple theory of reality. And as Feynman put it, okay, I mean, Feynman understood at least this, that the idea is you're trying to look for the simpler answer, the checkerboard. Okay, we already have discovered the absolute truth, laughable. Well, we've discovered a hell of a lot. And I'm saying the evidence points glaringly at the truth. The speed of gravity is the same as the speed of light. The speed of magnetism is the same as the speed of light. Clearly, light is a force, just like gravity and magnetism. And clearly, it's the cause of the movement. That's why your work is incredibly important. I just don't like it being compared to these people who are pursuing theoretical let's just blame a multiverse. Let's just say photons can read our minds. Let's just say, Heisenberg, Huygens. Yes, it Huygens is when there's a single slit, but no, it doesn't Huygens when there's two slits. A virtual photon is just something you plug into an equation. Well, again, I don't think it even works that way. So frankly, I don't even buy that. They have to throw it in an equation in some form where it's not going to look like a photon, because you can't do repulsion and attraction with the same virtual photon. Somehow it produces good results. Well, you say it does. Does that mean they actually exist? Well, it might or might not. They've taken the polarity out of, look, they don't even recognize that electrons and protons are the magnetic monopoles. That's how clueless they are. So clearly their mathematics cuts the nuts off of dipoles. And they only deal with one pole at a time, okay? There's no pair. The math working out is certainly not enough evidence. Well, again, I don't think it works out, but whatever. What's supposed to happen is people having arguments about this stuff. What's happening instead is they confuse working equations as an indication that they must directly correspond to reality. Their equations are so simple. They don't have any depth. They don't give you tremendous insight. Again, they're just equations formalizing effects we can all see. We see the effect. It's not that complicated to write an equation describing the effect. And every term in their equations must actually somehow exist in some field or dimension in the real world. Well, that's the joke. That's what I'm pointing out. Is Maxwell's equation has mu0 and epsilon0, and somehow these two numbers just happen to add up to the speed of light. Wow, 1 over the speed of light. That's just totally misguided. I'm saying it's just contrived math. The math has been geared to duplicate the effect. The variables could be almost anything. They could probably just put in how big is a cockroach's anus, and they could put that as a constant in any one of these equations, and they could still make them work. Because they'll just have some other dopey constant that's minus the size of a cockroach's anus. That's the way they use frequency and wavelength in equations. You can see it in equations. They'll use the frequency and the wavelength, and they'll multiply them times each other to come up with a 0. I mean, it's, same number times same number. What bullshit. Let's not forget that the character Hoffladay is described as being in the book Utopia. Well, I haven't read that. Raphael's last name, Hoffladeus, means dispenser of nonsense. Well, whatever. I don't think that's Hoffladay's name. I think it's half of 2 names or something. But whatever. I wouldn't say Hoffladay dispenses nonsense. I'd say Hoffladay is dirty in how he paraphrases arguments. He's not a fair cop. Yeah, that's what I'd say he is. But I don't think makes unreasoned arguments. Most of his arguments are fairly reasoned. It's his aspersions that have no basis in reality. It's his maligning crap rhetoric that is totally superfluous and unnecessary to the cause that makes him an obnoxious character. So anyway, all right, so I think we have something in the spam folder. No other commenter, so if anybody wants to comment, now's the time to do it. All right, so let's see. You're confusing yourself by putting the wires of the voltmeter around the changing magnetic field. It's just idiotic. Frank, I didn't do it, but frankly, it's just, you can't not do it. The entire circuit is being affected by the magnet, the changing magnet, the electromagnet. The entire circuit. There's no part of the circuit that's outside of the effect. Okay, there might be some wires that are getting hit more and some getting hit less, but clearly it's affecting all of it. And so at any location you're probing it, your probe is now in the effect of the circuit. And there's going to be energy hitting it and pushing, creating voltage inside of the probe. Duh. Okay, there is no changing magnetic field in the voltmeter loops. Of course there is, in Professor Lewin's explanation. Well, then it's just retarded. If there's no pressure in the voltmeter wires, then there's no pressure in the circuit. There's no battery in the experiment. The only way there can be any voltages read is they have to come from the changing magnetic field. That's it. That's the only source of the voltage. Just spend a few minutes thinking about Faraday's law, rule, equation, whatever you want to call it. It really is quite startling and insightful. I don't know why you find all of that. It's not that complicated. I mean, I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's just pretty much a loop rule. Like I said, the only part that gets complicated is the integral if you want to do this over time. So you think it's smart to do integrals when you don't need to. Okay, I think it's retarded. The probes are immune. Okay, this has got to be hilarious. He put R in bold. Okay, the probes are immune from the changing magnetic field because there is no changing magnetic field inside the loop comprised of the voltmeter and the resistor. Of course there is. What's stopping the magnetic field? I don't even know how you can possibly say something so stupid. I have a magnet here that's changing, switching, plus minus, plus minus. I have a wire. How can I, so this wire is staying permanent, let's just say. Doesn't really matter. And then I have another wire here. Now they can be affected a little bit less, but they're both going to get affected. How does the probe wire touch this wire? Right? So you're saying the probe wire can go to this wire and connect to it, right? And the magnet's here. And somehow this wire isn't going to be affected by the magnet that's right here. It's affecting this, creating voltage, but somehow it's not creating voltage in this wire. How is that possible? It's amazing. Okay. Anyway, inside the loop comprised of the voltmeter and the resistor, assuming everything is happening in the plane of the paper. There's no plane of the paper, okay? The guy did the experiment. Lewin did the experiment. It's not in the paper, okay? There's an actual experiment. Now, Lewin didn't show us exactly where he was probing the experiment. Close to the resistors, about one single location. He didn't show it. Like, did he have one wire coming off the experiment and put both probes on the same wire? How exactly did he probe? He didn't show us that. There's no illustration of exactly how he probed the experiment. The electric boom guy did show us, and he showed us why you get different results. You don't twist the wires, you get different results. You have the wires in different positions, you get different results. He showed us that the wires are being affected by the inductance. Look, I mean, this shouldn't be this complicated. You're just being obstinate or something. I don't understand. It's a simple argument. How do you make the probe wires immune? You say right here, the probe wires are immune. How do you do that? How do you make them immune? Anyway, happening inside the plane of paper. If you don't get this, damn right I don't get it. How do you connect to something that's inside the nuclear power plant without going inside the nuclear power plant to connect to it? How do you do that? If you don't get this, you don't understand the difference between KLC and Faraday's law. I couldn't give a shit about the difference. I couldn't give a shit about Faraday's law or KLC. To me, that's not the argument. The argument is, what do inductors do? Do inductors induce current in wires? And do probes have wires connected to them? And do the wires the probe is connected to, the metal pieces that are connecting there, whether you're using a little alligator clip or using a little hooky probe or however you're probing it, do those pieces of metal also get affected by the inductance? Simple argument. The inductance is creating a voltage in the wire, right? It's also creating, the probes are made of wire. You understand that those wires are also having an inducted effect. They're having electricity induced in them. What don't you understand? Amazing. It's not one location on the wire, it's two. So again, that makes it even kind of stupider to argue this, right? Because let's say if he does probe it at two different locations, and the inductor is what's creating the current, the pressure. There's no battery in the circuit, right? So you don't have any solid location where all the voltage is, like plus 9 volts ground. You don't have any one source of hose pressure. The hose pressure is being created across the entire wire, little bits at a time of pressure. So there is no one location of voltage. Voltage is being created here, 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 here. It's like having a ton of little batteries in series almost. So that would mean, of course, you're going to get different readings on the voltmeter. Because you're on, the wires essentially become the battery. The wire is now creating a voltage potential across it. There'll be more pressure in certain locations on the wire that are closer to the magnet than other locations that are further away from the magnet. You know, unless your wires are perfectly curved exactly like the inductor, they're going to be affected by different amounts of field pressure. Duh. Man. All right. Okay, it's 2. It's the voltage drop over each resistor that's being measured. Well, anyway, we don't have any evidence of that. Lewin didn't show the experiment. He doesn't show where he probed the experiment. So we have no evidence that it's being probed at 2 different locations. He says there's 2 voltages at the same location. That's his assertion. You truly are a numpty if you believe the induced power in both resistors is equal. Well, why would I'm not even talking about, I don't give a shit about the fucking resistors. Who's arguing that the 2 resistors are equal? That there's the same amount of current going one way as there is going the other way. I'm certainly not making that argument. I'm saying you can't measure it. That's my argument. The voltages are different, but the current is the same. So again, that's a different wattage. You can't have different wattages. So that isn't going to work. I mean, clearly, 2 different resistors, okay, the same amount of power isn't going to go through both resistors. The one with lower resistance is going to have more current. It's logically. You know, duh. But that's not what the argument's about. Maxwell and Faraday never probed voltages in the electric field of a capacitor. This isn't a capacitor, so I don't even know what that means. A capacitor's field is completely different. Number one, it's a mono field. But anyway, where do you think displacement current came from? What a dipshit. Again, I have total no respect for the whole idea of displacement current. Yeah, I think that's absolutely nonsense. You don't understand why inductors, you don't understand why capacitors take times to charge or why inductors do. You have no clue because you don't understand how coils of wire work. You don't understand that the magnetic field moves faster than the current in the wire. You don't understand shit, dipshit. So fuck you. You almost got it at 15.7. Yes. If you move the voltmeter to the other side of the resistor loop, keeping the same connectors, it will actually read the voltage over the resistor. So you're just making my argument for me? I don't know. You're one of the people who, when they finally get it, they'll say, "Oh, I knew it was that obvious." Well, can I make a bet with you? All right, that you're going to be the dipshit who's going to have fucking egg on his face. And can I have your real name or something? Can you put your face on something so we know in the future you're a jackass and nobody should listen to you because you were so catastrophically fucking wrong, you patronizing hunk of shit? All right. So we have Douglas again. By the way, he once spent an entire video arguing that sound waves follow the relativistic Doppler shift. There's no relativistic Doppler shift, so frankly, that's just horseshit anyway. The simple argument I'm making is redshifts always the same, whether the object is moving towards you and it's moving, or I'm moving. The redshift is always the same amount. Movement for movement, same amount of shift. Whether you're moving as the receiver or whether this thing's moving as the emitter, same amount for sound and for light. That's my argument, jackass. It doesn't have anything to do with relativity, fuckhead. Yeah. It just has to do with the facts. There's no evidence of emitters creating different effects. I've asked for the evidence. There's no evidence. Go find me the evidence. In classical mechanics, I'm not even making this up. You are making it up. That's the whole irony here. You have zero evidence. Zero evidence. I asked Professor Lewin, Where's the experiment of sound creating different effects from emitters and receivers? Where's the experiment? He said Sputnik. I point out Sputnik's radio waves. This entire channel is beyond lunacy. No, you're beyond slandering, lying, fucking pieces of crap. So go fuck off and die. There, at least that one removed. Cool. I won't block it yet, but fuck you people. Like I said, I'll bet you real money you're going to be one to have the eggs on your faces. You fucking pompous, arrogant douchebags. You got no evidence for your fucking statements. None. There's an E field. Beep, 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 beep. Of course, it's invisible and has no magnitude and doesn't have any effect. But yeah, it's really important. The thing that doesn't do anything. You're such cunts. All right. So let's see. And no more comments. So not too many participants. Again, I invite, please, anyone who has any kind of capacity to speak English in a reasonable way can make their computer actually access their microphone at minimum. Be better if it's a camera too. And I can let you in this room to discuss your problems with anything I have said in these videos. And you can have your say and make your counter arguments. If you have the balls to do it, you cowards. Yeah. So, and look, if somebody just wants to talk about my theory because they have some question, that's fine. Yeah, you don't have to be antagonistic. But either way, I invite debate or discussion. If anybody's capable of doing it in some kind of manner where they don't have to fling a bunch of insults. I mean, I'm clearly disinterested in insults, but frankly, like I said, you people always ask for it. You people always start the fight. Okay. So I think that's it. So I probably should do a Linux video now that I have some time. I don't see it late. Well, anyway, I'll give you a couple of minutes. If somebody has something to say, I should just see if there's anybody in the room. Maybe there's nobody in the room. Maybe it could be true. Oh, 14. It's not terrible. But none who wish to speak in any way that's visible. So yeah, I was going to play the Ken Willard video, but he does 14 minutes to do this simple thing, right? Where he's making these claims, that somehow, it's not the eddy current, when obviously it is the paramagnetism. So there's paramagnetism being created inside of the brass spinning wheel. It's a moving conductor in a magnetic field, and obviously it's creating a magnetic field that's repulsive to the regular field that is opposite. The same, they're lined up the same poles, north, south, north, south. And obviously that's going to create torque when it's at an angle. North, south at an angle is torque. So clearly the obvious explanation. The magnet is essentially a monopole when you're on top of it. So especially when you have a magnet 5 inches across, there's no red energy affecting the magnetism at all. So all you're really doing is creating a levitating countercharge. And it's clearly not enough to levitate a heavy piece of glass. What you ought to do is get a gyroscope that spins much closer to the surface of the magnet. That might be interesting. And see if you can get it to levitate. But theoretically, if you have a strong enough magnet and you spin a brass disc at a high speed on top of it, theoretically, you might be able to get it to levitate. But he's done this before. Like I say, he tilted it on the edge. You know, he'd spin on top and do it in the center, and then he'll just go to the edge and tilt it. And again, it's just so obvious. He's on the edge tilting it, which just means that it's spinning this way in a dipole field. Of course, there's going to be a torque. And then he did another ferrocell video. And he's included in all the ferrocell videos now. He keeps saying photon interference now. So he's using the interference bullshit. A year ago, he never mentioned interference, never talked about anything being interference. And now he just keeps using its interference pattern. And what, if these people had any integrity, what they'd do is make a ferrocell with just 2 LEDs, and then make one with 4 LEDs, and then make one with 6 LEDs. And they just show you that that's all this pattern is refracted light. The LED shoots this way, light spreads this way, and it'll create 2 arms going this way. So the arms are always perpendicular to the light. So the light shoots, and it's hitting the rays going straight across. The rays are going in straight lines. And because it can only reflect off it when it's flat, so on different rays, the flatness, the angle that shoots up at, will be different in different locations. So the different rays will be perpendicular, right? So if I want to be perpendicular to this point, the perpendicular changes as I rotate. So as I rotate this arm, this is perpendicular, and then this becomes perpendicular, and this becomes... So you're seeing light from different rays, of lining up ferromagnetism. So the rays of the magnets are lining up as magnets in ray form, in lines. And that's all you're doing, is hitting different ones of those lines in different locations to create the line. That's why it's curved, is because there's a different location that's perpendicular from this light source. So at each location, perpendicular's a different place. And that's all it is. So if you use one LED, you'll see 2 little wings, little holographic wings. And all you have to do is do 2 LEDs, then you'll see 4 little wings. And you do, 3 LEDs, you'll see 6 little wings. That's all it is. No magic. No, you're not seeing magnetism. You're seeing an optical distortion of a magnetic field. It's just pitiful that people fall for this crap. And they fall for it in this insanely aggressive denial way where they just pretend the truth isn't the truth. Like I said, someone, if any of Ken's little followers here that actually allows him, can have conversation with him or talk to him, why don't they just ask him, make a ferrocell with just 1 LED? Let's see the pattern. Or just 2 at 45-degree angles. 90-degree angle. So I have 1 here and 1 here. And what you'll get is the illusion that this LED is creating this line, and this LED will be creating this line. But they really won't be. It's exactly the opposite. So it's a perpendicular. So you should put them at like weird angle to each other, like 120, and then you'll see that it's just light refraction. Engineers versus physicists, who wins? I don't know. Who cares? It doesn't mean anything. Obviously physicists are, generally speaking, full of shit. Absolute shit. And engineers make things that work, so they really don't worry about theory much. They just worry about what works. I don't see any engineers building a bridge to the multiverse anytime soon, or using a quantum computer to figure out how to build a bridge anywhere. Yeah. I don't think they would trust a quantum computer to tell them, how thick the beams of their roof need to be. All right, well, a little too slow here, so I guess I'll go. A little too slow, so I guess I'll go. So anyway, anything else I have to comment on? Don't think anybody else said anything that's meaningful. So yeah, I want to get back to the lecture videos. I got a lot of stuff going on right now, so who knows when I'll get to, hopefully I'll get one done in the morning. But like I said, I do want to make the Linux video too, so I got to read the Linux comments. Anyway. So, till the next time and such, so forth and whatnot. 20 seconds if you're still typing. Finish typing. Well, that really won't do you much good because there's a little bit of a delay. So, too little, too late, say. No, countdown begins. Sorry, I'm slow tonight in general. Yes, well, I've known that feeling. It's all very difficult. The atmosphere feels so stinky. It just feels the air of existence in the new millennia is such a pile of shit. It was so much better before we did this 2000 thing. It's just suffocatingly stupid. The idiocracy, the stench of the idiocracy is so hard to get away from. So anyway, till the next time, and such.